Hey, witches,
Hey, I'm Chelle.
and I'm Layla, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick, a conversation of life, witchcraft, and our journey to reclaim our spiritual selves. Podcast about witchcraft today.
We're a podcast all about being witchy women, and sometimes breaks happen, and we're back on the broomstick. We want to talk about witchcraft and spell work and tarot and spirituality and maybe a dab of astrology. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
On our other podcast, we talk a lot about our coven and the different things that we did, the festivals we went to, the presentations that we did, the tarot parties, and we went to colleges and we had
Just
all
the
these
badass rituals we did
the
together.
badass rituals for hundreds of people that we facilitated and being very involved in a witchy magical scene. And then pretty much at the same time, we both stopped. Life intervened. We got
There's
busy.
times of dormancy, and we just had to go dormant for a while. Kids, life, work, it happens.
Big time dormancy. I mean, we went from being baby witches, just discovering all this magic, to ramping up and being so involved in everything and doing spell work and full moon and dark moon and all of these different things. And
We were
then,
gaining this like East Coast notoriety, and then all of a sudden we were like, I got stuff to do. I got
yeah,
kids, man.
I've got a husband, I've got a job. Oh, I'm busy.
Yeah,
And then shit intruded and I've lost touch with my pagan community. I've lost touch with my coven. I've lost touch with my witchy friends and
I've lost touch with the goddess.
oh fuck yeah. Okay, I was trying to avoid that part.
There's that.
Yeah, I lost touch with deity, with goddess, with all of that. And I tried, like I'd put some incense together, or I'd do a little spell, or I'd cleanse my tarot deck or charge my crystals, and then I wouldn't do anything
And
for
I
a
wouldn't do it.
long fucking time.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I even went so far at the early stages of COVID. I went and got my Reiki master certification. What the hell have I done with it so far? I stayed. It was like this roller coaster of up and down. I'd feel it, and then I'd be like, oh, I got stuff. And then I'd feel it, and then I'd be like, oh, I got stuff. And then some weird twist of fate, you and I just both kind of cosmically were like, hey, I've been kind of feeling lately. And we are like, no, you too, you too. And here we are,
And here we
back
are.
on the broomstick.
Back on the broomstick, back into that witchy life, back into reading all the new books and seeing this explosion on social media of people finding or reconnecting to witchcraft. We are not the only people who were practicing in the 90s and the 2000s that are now
We
like,
need to reconnect here. We need to reconnect with
yeah,
the
who
goddess.
had this big magical life back when it was more in the broom closet. And now it's so out and it's wonderful and accessible. And it's a great time to come back to paganism. And I'm loving all the resources, all the people, and all the things that are out there that we can see. And I'm very excited to bring people along on our journey of discovery, on our journey of reconnecting to
We
that.
can't be the only people who've had this happen.
No,
Other people have had to have had this sort of ebb and flow of connection, and through no fault of anything, and we're not going to shame anybody for how you got disconnected or reconnected, but it happens, and you and I can't be the only ones.
no, of course not. There's got to be more of us out
So
there.
we're going to talk about bringing it back. How can you reconnect, bringing it back, because we're not the only ones.
No, and we are not the only ones who sometimes let our faith and our beliefs, our paganism, our that whole mindset kind of it's easy to be like, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll light that candle and do that meditation in the morning.
Right, and then morning
I
doesn't
have
come
all these great ideas at night. Nighttime me is like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do yoga and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to make tea and I'm going to get out my crystals and I'm going to set my intention for the day.
and then you wake up 20 minutes before work and off you go.
And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, fuck that bitch from last night. She's
Yeah,
fucking crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking
I
about.
got shit to do.
I got shit to do. I'm grabbing a monster and I'm running out the door.
Right.
And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take that step. I want to find witchy me again. I know she's in there. I want to
we
find the goddess again. I want to walk in her footsteps again.
we all were able to make time and figure it out before, and somehow we felt too overwhelmed to figure it out, and we have figured it back out again, and we're working it back in.
And maybe it's some of that. In our other podcast, the Stoned Witches Hour, we were doing our new moon cycle
And that's
episode.
kind of how we used to do it. And I think it kind of sucked us back in.
To be a little bit corny, I think the world is crying out for this connection. And I think that's why so many people are realizing, oh, fuck, I'm a witch, or I'm pagan, or I'm heathen, and really feeling that connection to the earth and to the goddess and to the gods.
And it's not, this isn't anything about, having lost faith or questioning faith. It wasn't that at all. It was more about, you know, marriage, divorce, kids, grandkid, work. Me personally, I moved states. I mean,
Same.
you moved states
Multiple times.
and you and I each have two kids that, we're parenting. And even though our kids are older now, you don't stop being a mom,
No.
you don't stop being so just life happens. So it wasn't about a disbelief or anything like that. It was just about, we had gotten worn down and had a lot on our plate, and
Exactly. And it
something had to give. Something had to give.
And unfortunately, that was our connection to a daily practice and to being that witchy person. And for whatever reason, we didn't feel like, or we just didn't have the energy or the time for it. And I remembered what I was going to say about our Dark Moon episode. We were talking about cycles and how little cycles in your life are similar to bigger cycles in your life. And
Right.
that kind of period of going inward and having a different focus that didn't disconnect us from the goddess, but it kind of shifted focus towards other things. And now that cycle is changing yet again. That cycle, that wheel is turning. The ticks of the wheel, as you would say, are coming around again.
Right.
And so I want to honor that cycle.
This was just a bigger circle this time around.
Yes.
It was just a bigger circle.
A big fucking circle. And now we're right back to where we began, almost seeking and learning and beginning all over again with like the eyes of a new witch, a brand new witch. And there's just so much out there. And I'm excited to kind of share this weird feeling of being the old, powerful high priestess. I have commanded rituals of hundreds of people, called down the goddess countless times.
But now all of a sudden we're like a cross between that and a baby witch.
I'm like, what fucking candle do I use? What incense again? Wait a minute. What quarter was that?
My thing is, I get online and, I'm looking on Instagram and I'm on Facebook and I'm on TikTok and I'm looking and I'm like, oh my God, I need to get back in my game and catch up. Should I even tell people that like we used to do these classes and teach workshops and, as you say, command rituals for hundreds of people? Because it almost sounds ridiculous to me right now. I don't know. I almost feel like that was so long ago. Maybe it's a confidence thing. You know what it was? I haven't done a tarot reading for someone else, especially a stranger, in years and years and years. And then we did our episode of the Stoned Witches Hour, and kind of on the fly, not that you threw me under the bus because you didn't, but you were like, hey, Chelle, you want to do this reading for our special guest?
Oh, I totally did throw you under the bus on that one.
Yeah, I'll do it. And that was actually the first time I had read for a stranger in probably 10 years.
No shit.
If not closer to 15 years. That was first time.
Oh, and you nailed it. Like I just kind of had this feeling. You pulled this deck out. I'm like, I feel like it needs to be Chelle's deck. And it was such a beautiful reading. I loved it. It felt, the energy there was just like when we used to do ritual together. It was
when
great.
They started tearing up and the whole, and I don't know if you remember, but they were starting to try to give me some info, and I'm like, nope, I don't want to hear it. Let me finish. And that was because I needed that. I needed to know that I could do it, that I still had it, still had it. And when I realized I still had it, I was like, no shit, I still have it. But that was the first time I had read for a stranger in 10 to 15 years. And no, you did not throw me under the bus, and I didn't mean it that way.
No, I know what you're saying. But no, I did feel you had that deck in your hands. I mean, I know we both had decks because we were talking about them, but you had that deck in your hand, and I just felt that was your time, that you needed to do that reading. And I didn't realize it was for you.
I think that ultimately that was for me.
That's awesome. And it's that sense of reconnecting that just kind of keeps happening. I've found that in my experience, both way back in the day and now, life, the universe, the goddess, whatever you want to call it, has a tendency to put you on a path. As tarot readers, we know that life is not predetermined, but there's a path that you're on that's the most likely one. And there often sometimes seem to be predetermined things that you're not going to avoid no matter what.
Right. Right.
Past life lessons, current life lessons, karma, whatever it happens to be. Yes, you have free will, but there's some things that universe or whatever is going to throw at you that you have to deal with.
And I think the spiritual break we took was one of those things.
I agree. I agree. And deity has this way of, if you're not on the right path, things are hard. It's difficult.
Right.
And you keep getting signs that you should be doing something different. Once you finally accept that and relinquish control and say, okay, I'll do it that way, and you're going the right way,
That's
everything
what
kind of
makes sense.
falls in place and the signs start coming. And you, for example, my husband is doing a project at work that has to do with a constellation in the sky that he named. And now all of a sudden he's seeing that everywhere. You know,
Which is so
magical,
weird because
right?
when you've pointed out to me, I've been like, wow, now I feel like I'm seeing it everywhere.
Exactly. And I do feel like the universe will do that for you when you're on the right path. It might still be hard because difficulty is part of life and it's definitely part of magical growth. But things will kind of flow. You'll feel that flow. Even as it's hard, you'll feel that flow and you'll feel that you're moving in the right direction. And if you're not, if you're like, I'm going to step out of this and do something different, the goddess is going to slap you right upside the head, make things a million times harder until you get back on the path you're supposed to be on.
Right, right. And here's what I love the most about this whole story right now. Just the synchronicity that you and I are just in sync with all this. We kind of flew out of it together. We flew into it together. We flew out of it together, flew into it together, flew out of it
Mhm.
together. And here we are flying back in on our broomstick.
Exactly.
I think when it comes to specifically tarot, what did it for me, and I think what got me back into the groove, I'm a weirdo and I don't like to conform to the norm.
My beloved weirdo.
Right. Like I would never touch a Rider-Waite deck in my life. I'm like, that's so basic. And like literally, 30 years didn't touch a Rider-Waite deck. I own a couple because as you know, I'm an obsessive tarot collector.
What is it, 164 now?
Yeah.
Nice.
So a few months back, I don't want to say I succumbed to the Rider-Waite, but I kind of succumbed to the Rider-Waite. And I actually had to reconcile this within myself. It actually had to be a conversation. I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to get back into tarot, damn it, I am going to start with that Rider-Waite deck. Now, granted, I got the Rider-Waite Smith Coleman Centennial one for the specific version, if you're wondering. I don't know what it was. I shuffled those cards and it was like the switch just flipped back on. And it was literally like a switch. It was like it was off and then it was on. There was no in
Nice.
between. There was no in between. It was off and then it was on.
And that absolutely
And
happens
I think
sometimes.
it's because I reconciled the fact that I needed to go back to basics. Back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I was too good for the Rider-Waite. No, I wasn't. And I had to come to this point now to be like, no, you're not, bitch. Go pick up that Rider-Waite deck and shuffle it.
As soon as you gave into that, things started to fall into place. And that's
Yeah.
when everything started magically kind of moving forward. It's interesting because I think this is maybe the fifth time that you have brought up and apologized for the fact that you're using the Rider-Waite deck. And I think it's because you are still kind of like incredulous inside yourself that you're like, I can't fucking believe I'm using the Rider-Waite deck.
I can't. I can't. I can't.
And so it's been quite a while that since you've first told me that you were. And I think you still are feeling very vulnerable about it because this is a vulnerable spot that we're in. We are powerful fucking witches, man. And here we are at the beginning again.
But
And
we're
it's a
also
strange.
we're in a reclaiming stage.
That's right. We're in and being in that liminal reclaiming space is vulnerable. It's a vulnerable place to be in. And it's also a very magical place to be in and kind of accepting that vulnerability is, I think, what's going to propel us forward in our magical practice.
And I think one thing that's also been difficult is we didn't have a hard time breaking into the scene 30 years ago. And it's a different scene now. And we're older, we're different people. It's a different scene, and it's a hard scene to kind of break back into.
Finding people in real life seems to be difficult. I found quite a few people online. I'm able to actively talk to other people online, but finding that community in real life is surprisingly hard and surprisingly difficult.
And I think that's a big shift that was happening when we were being reclusive, is that shift was happening. And it was like, if you weren't already infiltrated in an in-person group, it just became harder and harder and harder. A lot of them turn to online, and then you throw, a global pandemic into it, and people are doing Zoom rituals. And I'm not knocking Zoom rituals and things of that nature, because there is definitely a use for it, but you cannot replace in-person magic.
I agree. Oh, I definitely 100% agree. There's nothing like it. Absolutely. And I think we're going to try and reclaim a little bit of that by being together here, and try to bring some of that magic to this podcast with our voices, kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. Finding people in real life is going to for sure be a focus of at least one of our episodes, because everyone wants to find that connection. Everyone wants to find that coven that they can work with.
So I think that maybe the big takeaway here is that the witches are back. I mean, we're reclaiming, we're rejuvenating, and we want to share our journey of reclaiming with those that are on that same journey and are looking to figure out, how do I get back in the game? How do I pull back into the circle? How do I tell the goddess I'm back? How do I get those quarters to remember me when I call?
Yeah.
The simple things, what candle am I using? Shit, what crystals do I use? Damn it.
Yeah.
Or just the simple things that we need to just get back to. It's not that we don't remember it and know it. We just have to get it back into our daily life,
and find out what new things people have discovered. What's the new interesting thing? I hear manifestation is huge.
If I see one more clawfoot bathtub in the forest filled with flowers on TikTok, I'm going to have a meltdown because I don't have one.
Right. And what can you use instead of these expensive, elaborate, gorgeous setups that you see on social media?
Right.
There's so much more to it than that. And, we'll talk about all of it. And hopefully you can follow us as we reclaim our witchy ways, as we walk this path towards an uncertain future, but back towards the goddess and back towards witchcraft and ritual and all of it.
And we hope that maybe it'll give folks a sense of, I need to get back to it too.
You are not alone walking this path, no matter where you are in the world, where you are in the United States. Join us, walk this path together with us, and we'll kind of reclaim a little bit of everything and find the magic in our lives again.
And no matter what your flavor, join us.
That's right. Come with us, grab your wand, and join us as we get back on the broomstick.